I want to talk to Nick, who's calling in from California. Nick, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing good, just chilling, relaxing. Got some breadsticks in the back. It's all good. What's
Nice,
up, Nick?
nice. Nothing much. So I just wanted to talk to you guys kind of about the supernatural, and I had some things I just wanted to run by you guys,
Okay.
see what you guys thought of it. Before we start, I just want to clarify that I am a theistic Christian. It's kind of irrelevant to the topic, but just to get that out there.
Just get it out there. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So when it comes to supernatural claims like ghost sightings or possessions, and even some of these movies that we see like Annabelle and The Conjuring, and these are supposed to be based off of true events, supposedly, right? They have some type of not objective truth behind it, but some type of subjective truth behind these claims.
I mean, dubiously, yeah. They're based off of stories that people claim are true. I would go that far.
That's why.
But are they? Yeah. Yeah. If they're based off true stories, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, but
yeah. So when it comes to these types of claims, why don't you think that people are investigating this more? Like that, atheists and skeptics are actually going to these places and testing it out for themselves and really looking into it. Do you think that would be a good idea? Maybe even something like a Ouija board. Why not put a Ouija board in a lab setting and try to produce the same results, over and over again?
It's interesting. I think they have tried it before, though. That's the thing. I think people have tried it, and we haven't found anything from it, and that's why we kind of like stopped looking into it. There's only so many times where you can put a group of teenagers with a Ouija board on a Saturday night together and figure out that nothing's going on. I mean, like I think they have tried reproducing. Obviously you're talking about broad supernatural claims, but there's a lot of supernatural claims that people who work in more serious positions than I do have really looked into this stuff. I mean, the Templeton Foundation did that whole thing on prayers. They did a whole study about how they wanted to determine the effectiveness of prayers of people in a hospital situation, and they had a control group of people who were prayed over and people who weren't, and they found that the people who were prayed over actually did slightly worse, and they theorized that it was because there was a pressure there to kind of like a performance pressure to do better. So like, that's just one example, but I don't know if I accept the premise that people haven't looked into it. I think they have. I just think they haven't found anything. But what do you think, Matthew?
Well, I didn't know that they looked into it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a thing. You should look it up, Templeton Foundation.
And I will say this: when it comes to the quote unquote supernatural, or if you're talking about like, I haven't seen Annabelle. I'm assuming it's one of those like demon possession movies.
Mm-hmm.
I heard Brad Jersak, he's an Eastern Orthodox scholar, talk about the demonic as manifesting in culturally relative ways. So if you believe in certain things, you are more apt to interpret stimuli as that thing. So for instance, when I grew up, I believed in demons and Satan, and lo and behold, had horrible nightmares where I felt possessed by some sort of supernatural being. Well, guess what happens when I don't believe in those things any longer? I no longer have that happen in my life. So I think there's the mind is very, very, very powerful, especially when you are constantly around like-minded people who do believe in those things. And there's this charismatic church north of me in Redding, California. I'm in Chico, California. It's called Bethel Redding, and they always claim that there are gold dust and feathers coming down from the ceiling, and they've never been able to take one and they go test it out, right? So the burden of proof is kind of on the people making the claims, not the people who are skeptics, to go in and disprove anything.
Right. And Nick, if you want to know somebody who, like, people who have spent, there are organizations like the Center for Inquiry and stuff that do these kinds of stuff all the time. Look at the career of James Randi. James Randi recently passed away in the last couple of years, but James Randi was a magician who literally spent his entire life just trying to debunk claims and succeeding with all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He looked at psychics, he looked at homeopathy, like all kinds of things. So like there are people looking into this stuff. I just think it's not as exciting when you figure out, oh, nothing's happening, it's not real. So like, people just kind of don't want to look at that. They want to look at what's cool in the movies, and like maybe something's out there, that's kind of more appealing to a lot of people. But that's my take. Nick, what do you think?
So yeah, it kind of brings me back to like the alien abduction claim, like just because it's the ad populum argument, where so many people say that they see it, that doesn't mean that it's true, or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's a cultural phenomenon for sure. Like think about how many people have claimed demons and angels, and well, that may be different for you, Nick, because I don't know how you feel about those things. But like you can look at large bodies of cultures in other regions that also talk about monsters and other kind of mythical beings, and you can find that those spread across geographic regions too. It's interesting how certain cultures of people seem to know about like leprechauns existing, for example, but not others. Is it because leprechauns are only there in a specific region, or maybe it's because a specific region of people hold on to a belief and it gets passed on? In Iceland, there's a contingent of people who still believe in I think it's fairies, or maybe it's I think it's the fairies that they talk about, because or trolls. I think it's trolls, because it actually affects their infrastructure planning and stuff, because they don't want to go down, they don't want to create roads over like places where fairies exist or where trolls exist and stuff. Like there, you can read up on stuff like it's kind of interesting. But anyway, yeah, like I'm with Matthew on this one. It outside of culture, unless we can demonstrate that these things are real, which I don't think we can, there's nothing to it.
And I've been having a hard time with that too, because I've been really like diving into this. I've been struggling with this, my faith for probably a few months now, trying to figure things out and from a skeptical point of view.
Sure.
And it's hard, because the truth is that there is not a lot. There really isn't any evidence for these things. I mean, I can take the common apologist argument and say, something can't come from nothing. The painting argument or the watchmaker argument.
Yeah.
But that only goes so far for me.
Yeah.
Right. Because we see natural phenomenon that look designed, and they're not designed. They're a natural set of processes that give the interpreter, or give the viewer a subjective impersonation that they are designed.
I agree.
They're really not.
I agree. It's the anthropic principle in a sense, right? Yeah. So like, Nick, if you don't mind me asking, like you're saying that this was hard for you, and I understand, because I was in the same boat. Okay. And in some ways still in the same boat, right? Because I don't find any of those arguments convincing either. And I grew up a Christian, and I lived that whole life. So now that you're coming to this place of understanding, like, let me just to ask you, like, where do you think you're going from here? And if you think you're going somewhere, does that scare you?
It kind of does, because I have a whole community of people that, I hang out with, and, we play games and stuff. We're all Christians, and I don't want to go to them and be like, yeah, I'm not Christian no more, and then be like, not want to hang out with me, or, ditch me or something like that. So that kind of scares me to lose those people in my life.
I hear you, Nick. I hear you. I was scared too. Like it gets easier. But I'll tell you this, I'm more satisfied with who I am now in being open and honest with where I stand than pretending like I'm something I'm not, and that's a decision that you have to make for yourself, where you want to go with that. But I'll tell you from my experience, once you start going down that path, it's hard to go back. If you can find a way to go back, great. you know, do what you have to do. But like, if you're going to a place where you don't think other people can follow you, the truth is there's other people out there who will take you in open arms and will tell you that you're fine just the way that you are, and that you don't have to be something for somebody if you don't want to be. But it's hard, but it does get easier. It really does. Matthew, what do you think about this? Any takes?
Well, I mean, it just sounds so much like my own story, and so I just can only say that, yeah, like the one thing I miss about church is the community. But at the same time, like, you got to be honest, like you just said, like you got to be honest with yourself. You got to be intellectually honest. And if once you peek behind the veil and you see things, you can't unsee them, right? Yeah. So you can't go back. Like I can no longer go back to the beliefs I used to hold, because I find them incredible. Like I can't believe them. You can't force yourself to believe something. You can fake it for the sake of your friends, for the sake of your relationships, for the sake of comfort. And we don't like change typically as human beings. But from a lot of people that I've talked to, from myself included, you can only fake it for so long until you've got to be like, no, I got to be honest with myself. I got to be honest with my intellect. That doesn't mean you're going to be an atheist. That doesn't mean you're going to stay a theist. I don't know what it means for each individual. Like you got to kind of work that out for yourself. And it does suck. It does suck. Like I said, when Dan and I were talking, it models the grief cycle, and it totally does. You jump all over that thing from time to time, because you do lose something near and dear to your heart when you go through this. Yeah, absolutely. Our hearts are out to you, Nick. And there's a lot of people in the chat that are feeling you as well. So if you're not watching it live, you should definitely take a look at that. Anything else you want to say before we let you go? Have to go on to some other callers here.
I think that's about it. I would just say check out the new Mortal Kombat movie. It's great.
Dude, I want to see it. I didn't realize it was a thing till like a week ago, because I guess I hadn't seen any ads for it, but I'm excited. So thanks for that. I'll check it out.
Cool. All right, guys.
All right, Nick, you take care. Happy travels. Happy travels. Man, that hit hard for me, Matthew. I don't know about you, but I got a lot of flashbacks. Well, it's just so, I mean, I don't want to diminish anyone's story, but it's so common, and I hear it all the time, that a lot of people are going through the same exact thing. And it does hit hard, because I do think back to like those first instances where I'm asking questions live in front of a Bible study. Yeah. or after a worship session where I'm like, man, I don't even know if, where you first admit that I don't even know if I believe in God, but you're leading worship on Sunday and Wednesday. Those first instances where you're telling people that, and it's so scary. And it's so, at first you might be excited when you learn some things that you don't have to believe. Hey, we don't have to believe that slavery is cool, like in the Bible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like we can just say, hey, that they were wrong, and it quickly turns from excitement to like, oh boy, I better shut up real quick. Listen, this is the one thing that Christians are right about, in that it is a slippery slope. Okay, because like it is a slippery slope, because like once you start going, you want to figure out, okay, well, what else do people have to say about this stuff, right? And I had the same experiences where it's like I'm at Bible study with people, and I'm like, so did you know that people like don't think that Paul actually wrote this? Right. Just stuff like that, where it's like, what? This is brand new information. A pastor never told me this. A youth group leader never told me this. But Wikipedia is telling me this, and also like this like these other people who write books and who have studied this stuff their whole lives are saying this stuff. So it's fascinating. I remember asking a pastor one time. It seems so obvious now. I was like, how we take Jesus really important, or like we take him really seriously and he's really important. How come I've gone to this church for 20 years or whatever, and we've never asked, well, how did Jesus read his Bible or his scriptures? If you want to be like, how the point being, how did he read it? Yeah.
And he was like, I've never asked that question. I was like, isn't that the problem? Like if you have a religious leader, whether it's Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, whomever,
yeah,
wouldn't you say, okay, well, how does he do Bible study?
right.
How does he do X, Y, and Z? Like we don't ask those questions. It's like, well, why not?
Yeah,
like, come on.
Yeah, so this might be a hot take for you, Matthew. I don't know, but like I was talking about this with Keith a couple, when he was on the show, and like I was trying to imbue this point that like if there was a dude that just told you to come follow him while you were out in the desert, or out fishing or whatever, and like you ended up like following him around for a year or two, like you would, from the outside perspective, that looks like a cult, right? Like that does look like a cult. Like I we don't really see it that way because we're talking about something that's ancient and a little more, has a little more mystique to it. But like when you put that modern lens on it, and if somebody actually went around saying the stuff that Jesus said, it's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it might be a little anachronistic to call it a cult, but I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's outside of the norm. Like we've normalized this to the point where we accept it on, like, yes, of course, Jesus is God, and this bread and this wine are his body and blood. Like that's just, how that works. But like, yeah, when you kind of look at it from an outsider perspective, it's kind of different.